So this is my John F. Kennedy Elementary Internship Final Presentation by Julia Fraga. Who am I? I am Julia Fraga. I am a senior at Jonathan Law. I'm a part of the Advanced Vocal Ensemble. I'm attending Gateway Community College to study early childhood development. Then I plan to transfer to either University of Bridgeport or Southern Connecticut University. John F. Kennedy Elementary School. John F. Kennedy is an amazing elementary school. It has a very welcoming and positive environment, and the staff is very kind, and the students are great. Site supervisor, I had Sydney Fielding. She's a first grade teacher. She is amazing. She's really good with the kids. Next year she plans to be a coach, which is basically someone that helps teachers be better teachers. So there's math coaches and English coaches. She would prefer to be a English coach just because she majored in English, but if she is able to be a math coach, then she would do that as well. She just wants to be a coach to help other teachers be better. Why JFK? What expectations did I have? I chose JFK because I want to be an elementary school teacher, and I wanted to experience what it was like to be an elementary school teacher. I was able to go to my old kindergarten class and experience the new class. That class was very chaotic. The teacher said it was probably the worst class she's ever had. But that's my class of 2010 to 11 when I was in kindergarten. From that class, it was very full circle moment for me. I was expecting just basically to experience what it's like to be a teacher, to see if that's something I actually wanted to do, because I was very hesitant to choose that as a major because I was scared I would end up hating the kids and be extremely impatient with them, but it was actually very nice. Responsibilities I had. I mainly stuck to one classroom, but I was able to move around from K through 2. I also visited pre-K. I mainly just helped the students. The teachers were the main ones doing lesson planning, teaching the classes, but once the students were able to go independently and do their work, I was the one helping the students with the ones that needed extra attention or extra care. I was mainly there to help them. I helped the teachers with the students. So as I said before, the kindergarten class was very, very chaotic. It had a lot of behavioral issues. They had a lot of chaos in the classroom, a lot of specific students that needed specific needs. So I would often pop in there, especially when there was a sub, because when there's a sub, the students are crazy. So I would often pop in and just see if they needed any help and just help where I needed. I would usually just be assigned a specific student that was having trouble that day, and then I would see that, what they needed. Accomplishments and challenges. One accomplishment I had was learning how to help the students. I had a lot of trouble in the beginning on how to speak to them, what language to use, what ways do I help them. I gained a lot of respect from the students. They respected me a lot. They called me Miss Fraga, which I thought was cool. So they really thought of me as a teacher. They didn't even know I was a teenager. They were just like, "Oh, how old are you? How old are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm 17." They're like, "Really?" Some of them asked me if I had kids. They thought I was an adult, so I thought that was cool. Learning the curriculum, that was very difficult for me, especially in the math curriculum. They tend to mainly ask questions rather than answer the questions, which I remember used to bother me a lot when I was a kid. But they try not to teach lessons. They want the kids to figure it out themselves, which was very hard for me to learn. But eventually I was able to figure that out. Setting boundaries with the students, that was very difficult for me because there were definitely specific students that were very clingy and very touchy. So I didn't really understand do I say no? Do I set a strict boundary? So I had to figure out how to show myself as more of a professional view to them. Learning how to help the students that have more challenges than others. There were some students that struggled a lot in things like math and reading, and I didn't really understand how to help them when they just weren't understanding or grasping what they needed. So I often had to go and ask the teachers for help because I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say, what I'm supposed to do. Like, I've tried explaining it several times. They just don't understand it. So that was definitely a very big challenge for me to be able to do that. Sense of responsibility and intellectual growth. Students depended on me a lot, and it was very scary at first, but I was able to get used to it and grow in that point. Like, at first I didn't even want to tell a student they could go to the bathroom when they asked me. When they asked me to go to the nurse, there was an area in the school called the sensory hallway where the students could go to reset, and I didn't even know like what to say to them. But I was able to understand more of like my placement in the school and what I was able to do and what I was able to say, and that helped me become more comfortable and realize that I was more of like I had a lot more responsibility than I thought I did in the beginning. Asking for help, I definitely struggle a lot with asking for help, but I was in a place where I don't have a degree, I don't have really any experience in education, so I definitely needed to like ask the teachers for help and ask where I should be or what I should say or what type of methods I should use to help, which definitely was a very big growth moment for me because I needed to ask for help. It wasn't an option. Time management, I definitely learned a lot about like working like in 8 to 4 type of job. It was very tiring. I often woke up and I was just like, I don't want to go, but I was also excited to be there. So that was a very like confusing thing, but I was also able to like time manage because I also had to come back for choir. So it felt like I was like at an actual job, and my site supervisor was like my boss. So I had to figure out schedules with her. Like every week I would usually have a conversation with her about like what I have to do during that week and stuff. College and future, I did decide that I want to be a elementary school teacher. I would prefer first and second grade. I thought I was really gonna like kindergarten and pre-K, but I actually didn't like it that much. They just need a lot more attention than I feel like I can give them, and I found myself being like very impatient with them and not even wanting to try and help. But that also could have just been the class, but I did realize that I would prefer an older age group. And yeah. Any questions? Masa.
Did you ever experience older grades like third, fourth, and fifth? And did you ever want to?
I didn't really push to see them, but I was able to like interact with specific students, but never like an entire class. Laura, did you have a question?
How do you think the curriculum differed from what we were in first grade for like these first graders now?
I found it very, very different. Like, they teach Spanish now, which I thought was very interesting. It's like very basic, like things like hola, como estás, like stuff that it's not like an actual, like, it doesn't change anything for like the middle schools and how they teach, but now they know like how to count the months, the weeks, days of the week, which I think is very important because it's a lot easier to learn a language when you're younger. And it's amazing how much Spanish they do know. The math curriculum, I thought it was different because when we were in elementary school, it was definitely very like lesson based and like this is how you do this is how you do that. But now it's more of a like, oh, well, I'm going to let you figure this out by yourself and I'll give you like the borderline things. And then you have to ask like the right questions where it's like, oh, if a student's starting to form a number line, why did you do that? Why didn't you do it this way? How else can you show this? Or when they were counting with their fingers, like, why did you do that? Stuff like that. So then the teacher, like the students were teaching more to each other than the students were. With sciences, it was like a completely separate class. Like I know at JFK when I went there for 5th grade, we would switch around classes. I don't know if you guys did that, but now it's like a completely separate teacher for sciences. You went into a separate room and they would teach a lesson, and I didn't really find it very effective because the students didn't seem like they were absorbing much. They were very excited to be in a different classroom to the point where they weren't really like learning. They were just like having fun, which could be beneficial for some, but not for all.
Did you learn anything about classroom management, knowing that it was a tough class? Like any techniques or things that you probably would take with you?
Yes. The teacher I had, she was amazing at like controlling her classroom. I that also could have been because she had a very good class, but she never really raised her voice. I remember only once she raised her voice, and I was there for weeks, and they were pretty chaotic. She would just be like, wow, I'm not feeling safe, rather than, you guys are in the wrong. She was like, I'm not feeling safe the way you guys are acting, where she would communicate her feelings and tell her how she felt, and she would be like, oh, well, this is my choice today. Later, you can make your choice. She was very good at communicating with the students, which I thought was very good because the students were in like a toxic classroom.
Did you bond with any student more than, like, did you have your favorites?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I had a favorite, I think, in every classroom, and I thought it was funny because it was usually like the more like troubled kids that needed more attention. Like my favorite student in the 1st grade class, like he was very shy. He didn't really talk much. He was very quiet. Like even when he walked into school, like he didn't really talk much, and um, but he would talk to me. Me and him had a secret handshake. In the other classes, there was other students. They were just like very energetic. It was usually boys that were my favorite, which I thought was funny. I thought like I would bond more with the girls, but the girls were more like drama filled, and I was like, like you're in 1st grade. There's no need for that.
This is irrelevant, but did you play with them at recess?
I did play with them at recess every day.
So fun.
Yeah, I'd usually play like basketball with them because I was like I didn't really have to do much. They wanted me to play soccer with them, but I didn't want to like actually run with them and then knock someone over. So I was like, okay, oh no, you guys are too fast for me. Like I can't play. They're like, but please. I'm like, no. But yeah.
So you feel like, did this firm up for you that education is the route you want to go, and this is like the age group you'd like to work with?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely, and I spoke to an intern that worked there. Like she's in college, and she does a program at UB where she interns at JFK full time, like throughout the year, and she gets her tuition completely paid for. She only has to pay for like some like technical things, which were um, like $3,000, but compared to like an actual tuition and $3,000, like it's nothing. So that's why I started to consider UB. I know there's programs like that in Southern. I've talked to Miss Kelly about a program that she was doing. So I definitely have to debate, and I've also heard from a lot of other people that went to UB that like they have really good programs for education, which made me really debate. But I'm going to Gateway first, so for me that I have time. But yeah, it definitely like solidified more what I was doing, because the intern I had spoke to, she went in for early childhood education. She got certified in that, and then afterwards she went for elementary. She was like, you need to have a range because you're going to be more likely to be hired if you have like a range of grades. They're going to be like, okay, I can move you around, put you wherever I want. So then that really like solidified like what more I was going to do and what more I was going to focus on.
Wonderful job, Julia.
Alright, hello everyone. So I'm going to be presenting on my internship as a PT, which is a physical therapist in the Milford Public Schools. Good morning, my name is Macy Raskell and I'm a current senior here at Jonathan Law. I plan on attending Penn State University in the fall to further my academic career, and I plan to study health sciences and kinesiology to hopefully become a athletic trainer or a physical therapist in the near future. So my internship site took place in the Milford Public School system. I worked at 6 different schools in preschool, elementary school, and middle school settings. I got to work at Meadowside, Live Oaks, Calf Penn, Pumpkin Delight, JFK, and Harborside. So my site supervisor's name was Laura Wipachowski. She's a pediatric physical therapist. She has 37 years of experience in hospital, center, home, and school settings, and she's also worked in the Milford Public Schools for 25 years. This is her holding some of her equipment and stuff. She thought it was a fun idea.
Yeah.
I also got to shadow some other professionals. I got to work with Kathy Johnson at Meadowside and Harborside, who's an occupational therapist. I got to work with Coach Gruber at Pumpkin, who's a phys ed teacher, and I got to work with him on 4th and 5th grade classes. Mr. C at Meadowside, who's also a phys ed teacher, and I got to do 3rd and 4th grade phys ed classes. So why did I choose this site? Being honest, my original internship at Sacred Heart University fell through kind of at the last minute. So my mom does know Laurel, and I also know her, which I'll get into in a second. I work at Camp Happiness, which is a camp that focuses on kids that have special needs and disabilities. And I'm also a babysitter for 5 different families, so I love kids, so I thought it was a good opportunity. Laurel's very involved in the environment that I work in, like Camp Happiness and the MAPS program through the Milford Recreation. Therefore, I'm familiar with a few of the kids that she does see for a PT. What is the business of this site? So the business of this site is to provide school-based physical therapy to students in need related to mobility, accessibility, participation, and safety. And the students have to qualify for the school-based physical therapy based off of their medical conditions, like developmental delays, or concerns with accessibility and safety. So pretty much meetings, evaluations, or consults are held to determine the concerns with the child as well as their needs, and eventually the team who meets up decides whether or not a child will qualify or fit the appropriate standards to receive in-school PT, and then they eventually decide how much PT they need. So my prior expectations, I was expecting a super easy and organized schedule. I was expecting to interact with just a few kids within a small age variety. I was expecting to be at one school at a time, maybe one school a day or something like that. And I was expecting to observe Laurel work with the kids and not really being able to interact with them. I was wrong. My responsibilities included I worked with 29 different kids from 6 different schools, and that includes ages pre-K 3 and 4, kindergarten through 5th grade, and middle school. That was 6th through 8th, so that's a wide age range. We got to give each kid their recommended amount of PT time each week or month. So for example, some kids need it more than others, obviously. So there was one kid we would see twice a week for 45 minutes, and then there are other kids we would see once a month for 30 minutes. It's different ranges of needs and stuff like that. We got to provide kids with stretching exercises and activities that applied to their situation. So for example, one kid might need therapy to focus on their balance, while another kid needs it to help move themselves. Some kids have trouble moving their own body that I saw. We had to use certain treatment techniques and control adaptive equipment, which was big machines and stuff. I'll get into that also soon. It's on one of the next slides. We had to transfer kids from one position to another, some of the more critical situations, transferring a kid from their wheelchair to a mat, or from their mat to a walker or a stander or something like that. We had to attend meetings for the kids and take notes and make suggestions based off of what we think they needed. I attended a 504 meeting, a PPT, a child evaluation, and a team consult. So these are some pictures. These are 3 different schools, 3 out of the 6 schools that I took pictures of. It's almost all the same thing, but this is how different it looks in each school because each kid is different, obviously. These 5 warm-ups, it's 6, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 1. We would do those with all the kids. We did that was their warm-up, like, every time. Some of them would get, like, rewards right here, like, it just shows how different each kid is. Like, there's boxes right here because one of the kids likes to draw as a reward. Like, that's his reward. It was just awesome seeing all this. So, disabilities and conditions that I worked with. I worked with cerebral palsy, which is some involves like spastic quadriplegia and increased muscle tone and tightness. I worked with Down syndrome, which some kids with Down syndrome have low muscle tone, muscle weakness, decreased balance, possible decreased attention, cognition, and heart issues. I worked with autism, which can vary from minimal, moderate, or maximal needs. Visual impairment, which is vision loss or blindness in some cases. I worked with developmental delay, which is like kids, their gross motor development is delayed, and sometimes it's for unknown reasons. I worked with a kid that had a post-heart transplant and a tracheostomy. Pretty much, this girl had motor challenges with positioning and mobility, and she had like overall general weakness and just developmental delays. I worked with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. I worked with a spinal cord injury, and this kid is wheelchair bound, and he's able to walk short distances with crutches, which is good. This next one's a mouthful. Spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia, which is a form of extreme arthritis. I worked with bilateral hip dysplasia, which is weak or loose hips, and that also can involve infantile torticollis. That's what it's called when babies are born with their necks very tight and like bent in one direction. And this can have an impact on infant development. I worked with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which is just like in kids, it's joint inflammation and stiffness. I worked with achondroplasia, which is a form of dwarfism. And if you have that, you can also have like extremely weak bones. Like the little girl we worked with has had multiple like bone breaks. If you bump her a little bit, like a bone will break. She's very fragile. I worked with a child that was post-cancer treatment. He had motor challenges with positioning and mobility, and he also had motor planning, attention, and behavioral problems. And I also lastly worked with a kid that had post-leg fracture. So we were working on his return to school from being out after surgery and stuff, and we consulted and provided service to him on how to function like safely at school. So treatment. There were 2 different treatment types that I was involved in. Direct treatment, which was individual treatment, small group class, which is motor group. It's like when you get the whole class involved in the exercises just to like watch one kid pretty much, but to make them feel all included. And I also took part in evaluation of a 2-year-old entering preschool. Indirect treatment would be consult, and some of the treatment equipment I used were therapy balls, bolsters, wedges, obstacle course equipment, and a vestibular swing. So this is adaptive equipment I used. I used wheelchairs, travel chairs that was in school and on field trips. I used assistive gait devices, which are multiple types of walkers for kids. I used prone and supine standers, mechanical lift, orthotics, which are like foot or leg braces. I used crutches, positioning cushions, and mats, which we would use to have the kids do their stretches and exercises so that they weren't on like the hard ground or anything. Parallel bars, which like kids hold on to walk, a trampoline that was for warm-ups, and assistive technology, which were like included iPad and switches. And I also got to witness service to adaptive equipment. I got to see someone like fix a wheelchair and stuff, so that was cool. He was talking about all the parts. And this is just a picture of, this is the crutches I'm talking about, not crutches for like injury. This just helps one of my kids walk, and a majority of my kids wore orthotics, which are braces. So these are pictures of like a lot of the equipment I just named. This is a trampoline. This is one of the walkers. They all look different, but this is just one of them. This is like a reward for one of the kids. One of the kids loves stickers, so if he does good in PT, he'll get stickers. Over there, we have like some stairs that the kids work on, and that's a climber, the little purple thing. And on the bottom, that's a balance beam. This is another reward for some of the kids. One of the kids loves to check off certain things, so that was his reward. This is a vestibular swing, and that is a stander. Our problems and challenges. So we were constantly moving around and had very tight scheduling. We were moving from school to school, like daily. We would move sometimes to 3 schools during a day. And like PT sessions, meetings, and lunch, like everything would overlap pretty much. Like it's a crazy schedule. Trying to fit in makeup sessions when kids are absent. So the PT is required to see like each kid a certain amount of times per week. Even if they're absent, they have to find time in their own schedule to make it up. So we had a lot of those, it was stressful watching her have to fix her schedule and stuff like that. Having to compete with some of the kids and trying to get them to cooperate. Some of them like wouldn't listen or had like behavioral issues. And then explaining certain concepts to the kids and making them feel included instead of isolated in some cases. For example, I had one kid who's the one that's wheelchair bound, and on field day, he didn't understand why he couldn't take part in like the bounce house and stuff like that. And we had to like sit down and have like a conversation with him about how we need to be safe and stuff like that. Our accomplishments, so Laurel's work was able to help certain students with like their physical limitations and challenges to be their best to attend and engage in school to their greatest capacity. I got to interact with the children firsthand, so like I said, I didn't get to witness it. She would have me help out a lot, like whether it was doing the balls with them, doing the stretches with them, picking a number for them to have to count to while they do their airplanes or stuff like that. So I got to interact with them firsthand, like I said, and better comprehend how and why a school-based PT does their job. I got to learn how the result of a PT's intervention helps not only the students, but also like the peers and the school community to be a better and a safer place for everyone. So it helps like the other kids to understand why we need to be safe around like kids that need PT, because everyone's different. And these newly developed, I had time management. I learned time management, problem solving, and patience skills. And they will help to prove very useful in my future if I go into a field related to therapy or education. I don't know if this will work, but I have a quick video just to show, like, speaking about our accomplishments. This is just a video of some kids doing obstacle courses, and it just kind of shows, like, an accomplishment. Before we start, I'll start by saying, a lot of these kids in the beginning could not even do any of this stuff. Some of them couldn't jump, they couldn't walk, balance, but it's impressive. You'll see how they learn. I just put on full screen. If it loads.
It will.
Okay.
Nice job. Okay, jump 2 feet. Colors, 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet. Good job. Keep going.
See how hard it is for him? Like, some kids can't even balance on one foot. He has trouble with balance.
3, nice job. 4, get your knees ready. 1 foot. 5, nice job. Step down 1, 2. Step up 1, 2. Step down 1, 2. Step over. Jump, jump. Okay, 2. Bend knees, jump. Thank you. Number 3. Bend knees, jump. 4. Stepping stones, one and the other. Step, step, step. Whoop, you fell in the water. Nice job. Forward. Balance beam, 2 feet.
Even simple things like that, some
Now,
kids need.
around and around. Good job, Ed.
And I want to keep, like, Laurel's voice in it because you could just see how good she is with the kids. Like, she's amazing. She knows what she's doing. So that was it for that. And then, so my future plans, this upcoming fall, I'll be during my academic career at Penn State University, like I said before, to study health sciences and kinesiology. And I will continue to work at Camp Happiness over the summer and see a few familiar faces that I got to see during my internship. Thank you for tuning in. Do you guys have any questions?
There's not a lot to say because you did an excellent job, and
Thank you.
Honestly, I love the footage at the end because I think it's sometimes hard when you're in like the academic setting, like you're worried about like showing a student's face or whatever, but you still were able to come out with like something to show of like all the progress that was made. So I love the video you shared. But do you feel like, again, knowing you're going to health science and kinesiology, what was like the biggest like takeaway from doing like physical therapy that you think you can apply to like your future studies?
So, biggest takeaway, that's a good question. I just think that being a part of this just proved like kind of how different everyone's situation is, which is a huge takeaway because obviously you can't do the same things for kids with like different situations. Like I have the kid that's wheelchair bound and I have kids that are fully capable of doing certain things. Like they just have, it's either like up here or it's their body. Like I think just realizing that every kid needs something different is a huge takeaway for me. Julia?
I know you said that you were moving around a lot, but were you able to like have any like connections with specific students or like favorites?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think. There were a few, like when I did the PE class, that was for one day, like each PE class. I made friends very quickly in that class. But some of the kids I worked with, I have a little boy that he's nonverbal, but every time he would see like me or he would see Laurel, he'd just like jump and shout, and he would use the iPad to be like friend, like because he just clicks. Yeah, it was adorable, and there were a few of those. Like they were awesome. I loved all the kids.
Did you find yourself using a lot of positive reinforcement?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like saying something as simple as like good job to them will make them, it lights them up. They're so happy. And that's why I showed that video, because you can hear Laurel like, nice job. Like she's really good with them, and she like is very positive about all of it.
Even when the kid missed, she was like, oh, in the water.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you missed the stone.
Yeah, in the water. And the kid would laugh it off.
Yeah.
Laura?
Would you come up with your own tunes to engage them?
I just used hers, pretty much. I was like, it's really catchy if you're there for a while, like step, 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 like in the hallway. That one kid I was talking about that's nonverbal, he likes to run. So instead of her telling him to walk, it's always, Miss Laurel is walking, Macy is walking. And so I would like tune in, and he would be like, okay. And he would like, we were like, oh, he's walking, like you're walking. So stuff like that. Any other questions? Thank you. I brought these. This is just like another example of a warm-up or a stretch that she does. She has a flamingo, and the kids love it. They hold it and try and mimic the flamingo, so I just brought it in to just show like what.
So like whatever position.
Hello everyone, I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Laura Sanser, and I'm currently attending Jonathan Law High School, and I intend to graduate this June. For the future, I intend on going to University of Connecticut under a financial management major. So that's enough about me. I want to talk about a little bit about the law firm I did it with. So it is named Laura Quinte and Golden, and it is an LLC. They are located in Milford, Connecticut, and they work with a series of criminal, family, personal injury, and mediation matters. And they've been practicing for nearly 20 years, and they represent individuals on a series of matters. So they are a private attorney, and they do represent a multitude of individuals. So I'm sure you're asking like, well, who are the people you did it with? He has an extensive background in his education, but he went to Quinnipiac Law School and to get his Juris Doctorate, and he completed and he was excuse me. He was admitted to the Connecticut bar, and he's one of the more older attorneys in the office, a little bit more experienced. And his primary areas of focus are divorce, custody, child support, probate, workers' compensation, and personal injury. I worked with him a little bit in the beginning, but as time went on, I worked more with Jenna DeMartino, and she graduated Sacred Heart University with a bachelor's in psychology, and she completed her Juris Doctorate at Western New England Law School, and she was admitted to the Connecticut Bar Association. So she's only been practicing for 2 years, and her primary areas of focus are divorce, custody, child support, and probate. So I'm sure many of you are asking, why this law firm? There are so many in Milford, and why did I just choose this particular one? Well, there are a multitude of reasons why. So to begin with, I did have a good friend recommend them to me and their services, and upon looking into them, I looked at their website. They demonstrated a high level of professionalism, and the way they put themselves together was something I really, really liked. And upon talking to them and meeting with them, I can tell they were very knowledgeable and experienced as well. They had nearly 20 years of experience, and they've demonstrated a very extensive understanding in their field. So I want to outline a little bit of some of my expectations I had before walking into the internship. So I was initially expecting something very monotonous. Sitting in an office, organizing papers, running to the copier, nothing really important. And although preparation is very, very important to win your cases, I was also expecting a rather tense atmosphere. I'm only walking in with barely a high school education, and I'm surrounded with all these highly educated professionals. But, although I was right in some of it, it was all the color of the beige manila folder is burned to the back of my memory. In the office, I organized a multitude of files based on the type of documents, and I will go into the documents when I'm done. So I looked into financial affidavits, court documents, pleading, discovery, attorney notes, correspondence, and retainers. I'm sure that's a mouthful. But also, I searched through many files to look for incriminating evidence to use against a spouse, especially with custody cases. Divorce can be very, very vicious. So I looked for messages, photos, and incident reports. So, preparation was only 50% of the internship. My responsibilities in court were more of a shadow. So although I couldn't really do much, I did run documents down to clerk's office when the attorneys were busy doing their job. And it was also my job to carefully just observe. I'm there to learn, and I saw many interesting court situations as well. So I'm sure many of you are asking, what documents, Laura? What are you even talking about? And I just want to talk about some of the ones I looked at. So this is a popular one. It's a motion for continuance. So this moves a hearing or a trial date to a later date. And a judge may grant this, and this may be on the grounds of absence of witness or evidence, absence of incapacity of counsel. So whether the lawyers just don't show up to any sort of pretrial, or something happens to them, or whether the defendant or plaintiff does not show up at all. So that could also be used to file for a motion for continuance, and also other reasonable grounds. To file for one of these, I'd say you don't file it the day of your hearing. It's most likely won't be granted by a judge. And so one of my other favorites I looked at were financial affidavits. So these are used to provide the court with your information about your debts, your expenses, and your other assets you have. And this is used to provide a very fair so when you're determining alimony or child support, this is used to determine a very fair amount that should be given to another spouse. So someone who makes $30,000 a year, they won't be paying as much alimony as they would with someone who makes six figures. They'd be paying more alimony or more child support. So I'm sure when you think of divorce, a lot of you think of the notion, I'll get half and you'll get half. Well, let me introduce you to my friend, the prenuptial agreement. So the prenuptial agreement is not officially a court document, but it is a written agreement between two spouses. And this establishes respective ownership to their debts and their respective assets if the marriage does end up failing later on. So this is usually established when someone has more than the other, or whether someone has more debt than the other. When you marry, your debts and your assets almost combine, and this is a protection against losing any amount of wealth you may have, or from having someone's debt become your problem. Especially, this can be considered student loans, property owning, car loans. When you marry, those loans also become your problem too. So, however, this agreement may not always be enforceable. And I had the privilege to sit on a mediation case at Pullman and Comley's. So I want to talk a little bit about the mediation process. But first, I want to talk about my experience with the mediation. So this was between two spouses, and they wanted a divorce. The husband had a multitude of properties and assets, but he had her sign a prenuptial agreement. But we were arguing to overturn it. So we argued on the ground of duress, and duress is pretty much a pressure or a threat to make a prenuptial agreement unenforceable. So this agreement was, an agreement, it also cannot be unconcisable, so that means there's a lot of gray areas within the contract. Maybe it doesn't address properties or a certain asset. You can argue that it does not cover enough, so therefore it cannot be used to in a divorce. And also the circumstances of a party have changed, making an agreement unenforceable. So I've also looked at another situation where the woman, she walked into the marriage and she developed horrible cancer at one point, and she was unable to support herself with the bills she had to pay. And she was unable to work because she was medically incapacitated. So although the agreement says that she will fend for herself, she's unable to because of these unforeseeable circumstances. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges I've faced personally in walking into this. Just how overwhelming the field of law is. There's so much. It's a very lucrative field. I'm walking in with a whole bunch of professionals who've been to law school and a multitude of other professionals in the office who have associates and other degrees such as that. And I'm only walking with a high school education, which brings up a very valid fear of mine, was appearing incompetent or clueless, especially given how educated their backgrounds are and how limited mine is. And so that was just in the office. So when I was actually in court, you're stuck to the attorney a lot, and that brings up, being places I should not be. So whether that be pre-trials with judges or meeting with prosecution, you don't know if you're supposed to be there, but I learned just by dressing and looking the part, people don't even bat an eye. So this which leads me to outfit planning and ironing every single night. So as you can take into example, ironing is a very, very important, especially if you've seen on TV, you have all of these prim, proper lawyers looking amazing, and no one really tends to focus on you if you just look the part or just blend into the environment. So every night, if I did have a court date, I would spend an hour ironing my coats and everything. So the accomplishments definitely outweighed the struggles I had during this internship. High school reading is one thing, and analyzing is a whole other. But law and analyzing law, judge hearings and different court documents. So you have to be very detailed oriented, and I learned to be very analytical and learn very multitude of comprehension skills, and especially organizational skills as well. When I was in the office and organizing through multiple documents, I've learned to identify countless legal documents, whether that be tax returns or bank statements or credit statements. We will all look at these in one point of our lives and say and be overwhelmed. But since I've had the exposure to this, I've felt a little bit less nervous into adulting. So not only did I learn like paper skills, but interpersonal relationships as well. I'm coming into court every single day, meeting with new individuals, new attorneys and judges, and just by presenting yourself and looking the part, I've learned to almost get out of my shell in a way. When you're coming to school, you tend to stay in your lane and focus on your studies, but at court, you have to present yourself in such a way where you can't be shy, to put it simply. So a little bit of growth I've experienced. As I mentioned earlier, the adjustment from the school to the outside world. It is definitely a change. In school, I feel like with COVID and everything, we've learned to grow so isolated and self-sufficient. But when becoming a professional and working with people who don't understand you, who don't understand your character, you have to learn to present yourself in a very professional manner. And not only that, I learned countless skills, whether that be organizational, analytical, reading. And I've also, from this internship, it was really fulfilling to do, and I've also like earned a sense of belonging. Like maybe the first week I never really felt excluded. I've always felt like I was supposed to belong there. I wasn't treated almost like an outcast at all, and it's been something that I really resonated with. And because of this internship, it's been one of my favorite parts of high school. And the idea of a career in law has been a serious option for me to consider at the moment. I've always considered both finance and law, seeing that they both go hand in hand. And I've noticed many attorneys know finance inside and out. And because of this, I wanted to explore the finance side at the University of Connecticut before I ever consider going into law school or any sort of career in that path. So before I answer questions, I want to thank everyone who made this involved, Ms. Sylvia, Ms. Burns, administration, and everyone in the office if you're watching. Seriously, thank you. This has been my favorite part of high school. I will now entertain any questions at this moment. Julia?
Did you have like a favorite case that you were able to observe?
I want to say the mediation case. It was very, very interesting to see how a prenuptial agreement is enforced and whether to see how to argue if not enforcing it at all. In that specific case, we tried to argue unforeseeable circumstances, but it wasn't really able to work because she had a very mild medical condition that wasn't able to decapacitate her at all. And we also tried to argue duress since like the week before she got married, he said, sign this. And she wasn't sure what to do, so she quickly got an attorney to look over it with her, but it wasn't enough to stop the prenuptial agreement from being enforceable at all. So it ended up settling, a very handsome settlement.
How long were they married for?
8 years, I think. Macy?
Was it ever like overwhelming at points? Like, did it ever make you like not want to go into the field?
Yes, I would say that. Especially reading and being as detail-oriented. I've always struggled with being detail-oriented myself and kind of like looking past, but as a lawyer or any sort of legal professional, it is so important that you look at the fine lines of everything. And it's a skill. I'm like, can I even develop this? How will I struggle with this, especially if I'm going to consider going to such a lucrative field?
Do you have any fond memories or any like important takeaways that your site supervisors like knowledge they imparted on you or advice for your future? Anything that you can talk about there?
I did hear a good advice. So this might sound as irrelevant, but when I would read over transcripts in court, because you know how they have people who record it, there was one case of an attorney absolutely disrespecting the judge. It was an awful amount of disrespect. And she said, Laura, if you're going to become an attorney, don't do this. So she told me a lot of what not to do. So I don't know if that would count as a question answer, but you know, a lot of.
Great piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely, Julia.
Were you able to like interact during like court stuff, or did you just observe?
I was very much of a shadow. Usually involved parties within the case. They're usually the ones who do the interaction, and since I'm not really an involved party, I didn't really talk too much. I just observed.
Can you see yourself being a divorce attorney? Like, there's so many different facets to law.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you gravitating towards this kind of like?
I really enjoy the drama involved with it, and yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
I feel like it's such a solid career path, considering like more than 50% of marriages end in divorce. It's like a high need field, I think.
With an uprising demand, it comes a service, and I feel like now divorce is more prevalent in our society. So I feel like it is definitely a job that will have a lot of demand with it. So one thing to come to.
Beautiful job, Laura.
Thank you.
So I did my internship at Meadowside Elementary School. My name is Masa Docker, and I'm currently a senior here at Jonathan Law. In the fall, I'm going to be attending Southern to pursue a degree in elementary education, and then in the future, I'm hoping to transfer over to UConn to attend the NEAC School of Education there. Why I chose this site, I wanted to get a hands-on experience that would kind of allow me to get a taste for what it's actually like to be a teacher and kind of see their responsibilities and more like behind the scenes. I attended Meadowside from grades 3 to 5, so I thought it would be interesting to revisit. I actually got to see a lot of like old teachers who remembered me and like kind of like see my old classroom, so I thought that was really cool because I really kind of forgot everything. And then we have a intro to early childhood education program here that's run by Miss McCoy. So all year, every single week, twice a week, I would work with like preschoolers, and that was really cool because it gave me experience. But I really wanted to see what it would be like to work with older kids. So that's why I chose to do the internship. It was also right close to my house. So this is the site supervisor, Gail Croyce. She's the principal at law. She started being the principal my first year, or no, sorry, not my first year. When I was in 5th grade, so like her first year was my last year at Meadowside. So it was really cool to kind of see her again, and like she remembered who I was and who my brother and my sister were, and kind of see like how she's also grown as a principal. My expectations, we didn't really discuss anything specific during the meeting with Ms. Croyce. All I knew was that she really just said to keep everything confidential. That was really just her one requirement, which does make a lot of sense because you want a classroom to be safe for the students, and you don't want them to have to worry about like their privacy being broken or violated. So keeping everything confidential and inside the classroom, I knew that I was going to be more hands-on and helping the teachers than just kind of like sitting in the corner and watching everything go down. And then she told me that I was going to be able to experience all grades like K through 5, which I thought that was really cool. And I only got to experience K through 4, but that's kind of my fault because I missed a day. But yeah, it was really cool. At first I thought I was going to have to choose a class like Julia did and just kind of stay with it the whole time. But I actually ended up getting like a schedule made for me, like a class schedule. So like in the morning I'd be in kindergarten, and then I'd move to 2nd, 3rd, whatever, and kind of just rotate. And I thought that was really cool because you kind of only get to go to classes when they actually need work done and when they actually need assistance. So my schedule was like pretty packed, and it was just more interesting overall. So these are the kindergartners. They're super cute. This is them during their morning meeting. So some of the responsibilities that I had was to assist with the assignments. So if they needed instructions re-explained, if they needed help with spelling, a lot of them were new to the Chromebooks. So like anytime they needed help with Chromebooks, like with Google Slides, whatever, some of the teachers also kind of struggled with the Chromebooks. So I would just kind of help them with that. I was making sure that they were on task. Since it was like the end of the year, there was a lot of like reading assessments and math assessments that like the teacher would kind of pull a group and take them aside and work with them at a separate table. So while the teacher did that, I would kind of go around, make sure they're on task, make sure they're not causing trouble. Resolving conflicts, this only happened a few times, but like some kids would just come up to me crying and tell me that like, you know, someone said something mean to them or someone shoved them or something. So I was able to kind of learn how to like fix relationships between students. Working with students who require more assistance. So if someone struggles with reading, for example, I would kind of sit with them and help them with that. And then any random tasks around the classroom. So a lot of it was like end of the year cleanup, organizing files, taking things down. So I was kind of responsible for that as well. So challenges, not knowing each of the curriculums. I only went through this like kind of for the first week, but I really like didn't know what they were learning, what they knew, what they didn't know. So it kind of took me a minute to kind of catch on to what kind of level each grade was on. I wasn't sure of how much authority I had. For example, like Julia said, when kids would come up to me and ask me, oh, can I go to the nurse, or can I go see this teacher, or do this or do that? I just really didn't know what to say because I was never told, oh yeah, you can go let them, you know, do this and that. So being a teenager, this only was really a problem in 3rd grade because they're just really like nosy and they just don't really see you as like they don't really take you serious. They were great, but like they just used to get like a little bit kind of distracted. But like all the other like younger ones, they all like kind of took me seriously, so it was a little bit easier to control them. And then this is a personal challenge, but I did work most days of the week during my internship. So I had work at like 3, and the school days doesn't end until like 3:30. So I always kind of had to like leave earlier, and that was kind of a struggle for me to get my hours in, but I made it work. So accomplishments, I did figure out what grades I prefer teaching. I do like teaching like 3rd, 4th, 5th. I just think that's a bigger fit for me, and I just like kind of get bored of like the alphabet and stuff. Like when I was with the kindergartners, it was just like it kind of got boring after a while. I did make some great bonds with the students. Like there's some kids that I'm gonna miss so much on because Friday's my last day. But this is just some of the stuff that they drew me. Like they just like handing you stuff. Like it's so interesting seeing like how quickly kids like get attached and like their love languages. Like when they see me in the hallway, they're like, "Oh, Miss Masa," and stuff like that. It's just really sweet. Understanding the roles that a teacher has aside from just like academically educating, teachers carry like a lot of responsibility, and I saw a lot of moments where they had to act like as a parent or like teach kids like things about conflict resolution or different types of like real life lessons. Also, it just made me more confident in my choice of wanting to be an educator. Like I saw teachers every single day for like a month straight, and I was like, I can definitely just, like see myself doing this for the rest of my life. So thank you for your time. Questions? Julia?
Well, did you have like you said you liked more 3 through 5? Did you have like a specific grade that was your favorite?
Probably 3rd grade. They were just really entertaining. Like you could get work done with them, but like during recess and stuff, like it just really kept me on my toes, like the things they would like say and stuff. So it was just really funny to like kind of deal with them. Macy?
I know you said like there was a concern. I believe you said there was a concern with you being like a teenager, but like a distraction almost. Like was that ever a problem? Like, and how did you like resolve that?
So yeah, me like my age was really only an issue with like 3rd grade because they just like don't really care that you're an intern. They're like to me like you're in high school and like we're friends and you're not really like in charge of me. But they did listen at some point though. Like they did get curious in some moments and get distracted. But when I would tell them, you know, like guys, go back to your work or do this or do that, they did manage to get back on task. So any other questions? Julia?
Were any of the students ever like touchy with you? Like, did they ever like give you hugs or stuff like that?
Yeah. They like, it wasn't like excessive though. Like they'd see me, like I'd walk into their room at like a certain time, and I remember like whenever I walked into second grade, a bunch of them would like leave their work and like come and hug me, but it was really just like, it was quick. It wasn't something like excessive or uncomfortable or anything. So yeah.